Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
Sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. So weirdly, even though there is nothing left, sounds like another one of Liz's Debbie Downer phrases.
Apparently I have a multitude of them now.
Actually, for me, there is nothing left is very hopeful because it's like, you're done. You're
That's
done.
nice.
And
That's
I think
nice.
actually, in the last episode, we were really talking about how like it feels like it's forever. But I think you do get to a point when you are done.
You definitely do. Yeah. I mean, you really do. And it's not the carrot and it's not the promise or an empty promise. But and you can attest to the fact that you do get to a point where you are done. There is literally nothing left. I mean, let's be fair. In the world of self-help and self-care and, spiritual hack, 101 to 501, you could start mining shit, but that doesn't have to be the case.
And also, if you do have one more piece, it'll come out when it's time to come out.
That's precisely it. But what people do is they use that as a crutch to keep from actually living.
And also, they can continue to excuse their shitty behavior.
Yeah.
If you don't want to take responsibility for yourself, it's easy to blame a part of your shit, right?
It can go either way. What I see in people, it's really because they just want to remain in that powerless state because they are not ready to take full responsibility. So by addressing this is my way of showing myself responsibility because I'm just going to keep fixing myself. But again, just as much as we're a work in progress, at some point we're strong enough, the motor's running, like the engine can go, we can live.
It's also an identity in some ways. And I'm not talking about it from even more of an ego place. It's like when you've lived in a world and all you've ever known is pain, right? Because, okay, you didn't from ages, 0 to 9 months. But eventually, very quickly, we start separating ourselves. We start separating ourselves from our parents. We start separating ourselves from our friends. We start separating ourselves from our family, society, school. Exactly. Goes on and on and on and on and on.
We have all these experiences that just highlight our separation.
Yeah. All over and over and over again.
Yeah.
You can't be who you are. Apart from there's 5 people who are my parents told me I could be whoever I wanted to be. And somehow all my friends seem to echo that back to me too. I'd like to meet one of them, but possible. But effectively what happens is it becomes the only world you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes the scariest thing is to actually accept that there's a different one now that you can be in.
Yeah.
Right? There is
that you can create for yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to, yeah. But
we talked about faith and practicing and living that. Yeah, yes. Yeah. The eyes rolled back.
Yes, you're not wrong. But it's more just the simple of if I'm not working on myself, if I'm not trying to heal, if I'm not getting rewarded for my healing from myself with a nice experience at the end of it, if I'm not still in school, if I'm not still at university, I was a perpetual student. I wanted to go back and get at one point my dad said we can literally wallpaper your room with the degrees that you have. I fucking loved it because who am I if I'm not learning? Am I really an adult?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? If I really can only act in integrity. And when I do, I'm in flow and my life unfolds in front of me. And so I'm not having to constantly look at myself and be like, oh, what's wrong? And, oh, it's because I hold shame around the size of my ass or, oh, this or, oh, that. What does that mean for me? How responsible am I?
Yeah.
And do I even know what that looks like? And that uncertainty of stepping into a new world is really we naturally want to look back and bring some of our shit with us. I definitely found this in me, but I was in different types of relationships with a whole host of different types of people. But somehow I was still superimposing my old experiences onto them because not to heal anything, it was healed, but to almost be in the familiar.
Yeah.
And be a familiar person to myself.
Oh, yes. When we consider what it means to close out our 3D lives, we're just afraid we're pretty much leaving it all behind and erasing everything, right?
Yeah.
Right down to the
super dying.
Yeah. Right down to all the relationships.
Which is not true.
No, it's not. It's just the memories we hold, the pain memories, end up finding a different place. So then we get to keep the sweet memories, and the pain memories can still be there, but they just don't trigger us.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't hold the same emotional
charge.
Charge, exactly.
Mm.
Just throw my words back at me.
No,
You're like, Liz, I already know what you're saying.
No, I'm like,
say your words for me.
let me just.
So we're at in our relationship. We're just going to finish each other's sentences.
I prefer not. But no, it doesn't have, like, it's like, yeah, that happened, but it's not making me feel not good enough. It is
right.
what
and
it,
that
it
just
was. What it was. Exactly. Is that also because you don't have shame attached to it anymore? Is that what the emotional charge is?
Oh my God, this is caffeinated Rhea. That's what I'm actually seeing. I'm like, wait, this is caffeinated Rhea. Okay, here we go. I need to like...
Yeah, that's what I was saying. We'll get through it faster.
Okay, sorry.
No, genuinely asking.
Ask the question again, because caffeinated me is like buzzy and not focused.
Yeah, keep going. I was saying, is that what the shame is?
It can be, but not necessarily.
Okay, fine. No, the emotional charge I was saying is that shame.
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
that could just be our trauma and our not good enough stuff.
Yeah. But actually that's cool, because then you end up living from a place that isn't informed by your pain and your shit and your trauma.
Exactly. Unless
you're bringing it in on purpose, which then I challenge you to be like, why are you scared of the uncertainty?
Right, precisely. And those who do that, generally, they just keep digging up the past to explain their behavior.
What are the things you need to be able to move away from that past? Apart from like karma, ego, fear, etc. I'm talking about the more practical steps of I am out of all those things now, and the possibility for me living a healed, joyful life is in front of me, but for some reason I'm not doing it because I keep trying to bring my past into my future. Mm-hmm. What are some tangible advice, steps, guidelines, whatever, that can help inspire and motivate people to try something different?
Okay, so I'm going to throw out the one word that we have used a bit, not a lot in this season, but we use it a lot, like all the time. We use it a lot in other places.
I'm so sorry. This is like a big lead up to like...
No, compassion.
Oh, God.
I know. I'm only going to just address it for about not even 30 seconds. Okay. You have to start with compassion for yourself, first of all, that you even held that. Because the reason why we keep recycling it is because we're not in compassion. We're not in step with those experiences or that particular experience or that person who came in and just broke our hearts, whatever it is. And whatever those moments were, those were the heartbreaking moments. And usually what keeps us recycling through is we cannot deal with the heartbreak.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, say you heal the heartbreak, and we have enough seasons to talk about the heartbreaking moments and how difficult things were and trauma, pain, shame, all of that, right? Sometimes then we find ourselves in this kind of in-between, the spiritual purgatory. And that's where a lot of people are ending up when we are dealing with the death and destruction of our lives, right? We have brought about our own heartbreak. And sometimes it's really difficult to accept that responsibility. And so we can't be in compassion with ourselves. And so we keep going back because we keep somehow assigning blame, even if we can recognize I still made the choice. And yet we're still kind of punishing ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's not shame. That's just I'm not fully accepting my role. I can to a degree, but not fully.
So how do we do that?
Well, a lot of us, again, we end up remaining in the spiritual purgatory, that in-between place, because we're not really moving forward. Right? It's kind of like the, one step forward, two steps back place. But this year is actually the critical year to really move us out of that in between. If we can't, we're really going to remain stuck and well into another year or two. I mean, this is the energy this is the truth energy we're having to face. And that pushes us toward our integrity. And if we can't own that truth, the full truth of who we are, we will remain out of integrity. Yeah.
So when I look at, for example, my humongous lesson, mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a part of me that's unable to own what happened to me even now. Mm. Like I still cringe at it. I can see myself in compassion. I didn't know any better. I thought this was love, blah, blah. But I don't know
Compassion's blah, blah.
But I don't know what to do apart from that.
It's enough. It's enough because you've acknowledged the story. You've worked through the story, and I don't just mean mentally, but you've processed. I mean, you've recognized the root of it, and you're still moving forward because you're also acknowledging that whatever happens, whatever comes, I'll be able to deal with it. So if it is like that piece of shame that's going to come right up in my face, I'll know exactly what to do and sit with it.
Yeah.
Even if it means going dark, which it probably shouldn't because you already did. But I mean, as you said, there was a relationship that was the root cause of that shame, which then got acted out or played out in other relationships. And then you look back, then somebody came into your life, brought it to the surface. You dealt with it. Is it informing everything else that you do? Not necessarily.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Because I was resolved to act differently. I just haven't maybe had an opportunity to try it out yet.
Exactly. And that's really what's important is there are enough people, and that's the purgatory, that in between is they become paralyzed. I don't want to try another relationship because I suspect it's going to be the same thing.
Instead of actually, I want to try another relationship and see if I can be different.
Yeah. Or see if it will be different. And if not, maybe I'll process it differently. You're not going to necessarily know that you're done with the piece.
Agreed.
Right? Until the next person comes.
Yeah.
If you experience it through a relationship. It could be the next job. It could be anything, right? But in many cases, it's the next relationship. Can you have enough faith in yourself that whatever comes from that next step, you will deal with it?
Because I guess if there's like say a residual shame on something, and you're like, okay, this is the moment, this is why it's been happening in every other relationship, and now they're all in my face at the same time, and I can see it, and I've faced it, and I faced the core of it, which is, I didn't think I was good enough, right, or whatever, in whatever body. Then actually now I'm like, all right, well, next time I'm going to remember this. I've faced it. I really looked at it in all angles that I could possibly in this moment. And I'm going to really try and remember. Yeah. To not, to try and to flip it, as it were. To
flip it, or, maybe just to not project it onto the other person. Who knows?
Yeah, or just remember.
Who knows? I mean, just fucking live your life.
Yeah, of course. But just it'll crop up when you remember it. But it could be that I noticed that it starts happening again in a different way. So I was like, okay, that's a different layer to look at. Or I could notice that actually it doesn't happen at all.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe I actually did, maybe it's done.
Yeah.
And actually what's interesting is when you start living in a way where it is done, because you're in this new experience, this new relationship, this new whatever, where actually that piece has been held, looked at, compassioned with, etc. It kind of then...
Blah, blah.
Yeah, the blah, blah. It kind of then doesn't inform your decisions anymore.
Exactly.
And therefore it's done.
Yeah. Right. Because you could, you're powerful enough to create your own reality. If you're doing all that navel gazing, you're going to start looking for evidence of everything that you're thinking, of all that, of that entire minefield that you pass through to justify having gone through in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And then that just keeps you locked in the loop.
When actually it's like, okay, well, I've done that now, and I don't want to do it again.
No.
So let's try and do something differently.
Exactly. Because at some point it will be different.
And that's the thing. Like now when I look at, for example, every choice I make, I know I've made it. I make it consciously. I have no regrets.
Yeah.
I can't.
No.
And as I said, I have faith in those choices. So I know it'll lead to something. So I feel kind of like all you can do is really acknowledge what you're going through, because then you know that there's the reason. And if you don't get the reason, then, well, that's the shame. See how I wordplayed there? A bit into it. Thing is that when I used to hear about this, and I used to think, oh, you mean we're going to blank slate my life and create all this space? I really imagined barren wasteland.
Yeah.
I didn't imagine anything else. And actually now what I'm seeing is it's really not that. It's just there's no pain left. That's it. Which
creates a good amount of space, which is another thing people fear when they hear creating space in your life. You're like, is it just going to be me?
No, but that's not what we mean. When there's no pain left, it actually means that there's space for you to enjoy the experience as it is. Yeah. So if I'm in a room with my friends, half my brain isn't how I can mitigate other pieces of pain. I'm allowing myself to be present. So the space, it isn't space as in nothing. It's space as in I can be present in whatever I'm doing. And I don't know, for me anyway, that's kind of how I feel it comes up a lot. Yeah. I really have, it's not that I'm just sitting around doing jack shit. If anything, I'm more busy, but I just am more present in whatever I'm doing. And it's not always about, because I definitely remember this. And it's not something sometimes I still experience it. If something's bothering me, or if I'm learning something, or if I'm missing something, it becomes all encompassing. And it bleeds onto everything that I do in every single way. So from actually having the space to enjoy a podcast recording, 3/4 of me is stressing about something else and tying me up in knots. Instead of enjoying a night out with friends, 3/4 of me is looking at my phone or, trying to plan for the next whatever.
Yeah.
And so I feel like actually all we're doing is just allowing ourselves to be more in the now, rather than in the past where the pain resides, or in the future where we think more pain will come.
Mm-hmm.
And the more now moments you have where you're present and you're actually happy, the more happiness becomes your baseline.
Yeah.
But if 2023, as you were saying, is about coming out of that purgatory, then what are the things that we're going to need for 5D? Or what are the things that we need for 5D in general?
The 5 things we need for 5D.
Oh my gosh.
Guidance loves they love their numbers and they love their like whatever. Their catchy little like 5 things you need for 5D. And you know, it's interesting because they gave it in this very specific order.
Okay.
And so the words came to me out of order, but I could not write them like that.
Okay.
The first one's trust.
And all its pillars?
No, it's trust specifically.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have written the 4 pillars of trust.
Okay, fine.
It's trust.
Everything's for your highest good. And highest good is like, yay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't understand what you meant.
I totally drew a blank.
Yeah. And everything with your highest good is like, we're not talking about like, it hurts for you to make you better, highest good. We're talking about like literally you are at your highest vibration and you're like so good.
Yeah.
Like happy good. Like it's like,
oh yeah, that's right. That everything happens for our highest good.
Yeah.
Because everything is all meant to move us along toward our fate.
Yeah. And like, it's all like, and when you say fate, it's not like, no. It's like just basically our happiest expression, our most blissful expression. Hence the B. The B in our name, eh? Yeah.
I like how you have to disqualify everything I say. You mean, and I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. Fine.
Some people will understand it like you say it, and they'll be like, oh God, why does Ray keep diminishing it? And some people will be like, oh, thank God Ray has explained what that means. Like, it'll just be different strokes for different folks, eh?
Fair. The second one is love.
Oh, my fave.
Yeah. We're just shining our light for everyone to see, right?
Especially ourselves.
Yes. Back to our divine expression.
Okay. Is that what love is, our divine expression?
Yeah,
is that
effectively.
another definition for it?
And yeah. So the third one is resilience. And that word has just crept in the past sometime this season, right? I mean, it's not something we've ever really shared before, but resilience will be very necessary.
It's like, can I really hold true to my faith?
Can I be able to maintain my integrity?
When it's easier not to.
Much easier.
But it feels more icky.
Exactly. And compassion, which we know and we've been banging on about, but that's being in step with ourselves and thus others.
Mm. Yeah. Which is just knowing I couldn't have done anything differently.
No, and neither can they. They're doing the best they can.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've never really felt that before today.
Really?
Am I becoming less self-centered?
Yes, of course. Every day, Rhea. And the fifth one's tolerance, which I think appeared in the last season, I think our previous season, but it is one of the essential values of 5D.
Is that kind of because it underpins the I thou situation?
Yes.
So, but like, how long is it going to take for people to get all those 5? Because I feel it took me like forever.
They were saying, so effectively, we pretty much need to have these wired in by the end of 2023. I mean, this episode comes out in March, right? So we pretty much have the year to wire this in. So we're just going to be confronting challenges and opportunities and experiences in order to really get us to get these 5 wired in enough into our being that is how we respond to or act in our everyday lives. Now, most, especially if you're listening to this podcast, will have it to some degree or another.
All 5.
To some degree or another. It could be minimal, but they have the capacity. Maybe they've experienced it for 2 seconds, but either way, it's there. Any divine being has it, right? It's just whether or not they've had the opportunity to express it. But we really do need to kind of up the ante, and we need to be able to have more and more opportunities to become bigger beings. And so in order to become bigger sort of 5D beings, or beings who are capable of so much more than they realize, we really do need to have all 5. These things really take time. But in order to wire them in, because it takes time.
And because it comes so natural, right?
It has to come organically, right? We can't just sort of force or think our way into, I'll just be a more resilient person. We need, like karma, we need these growth opportunities. And so that's what 2023 is. They're like really personal growth opportunities. And if we take them, like as we said in a previous episode, was 2023 is going to be one of those, we experience it in the sort of micro levels with one another in different relationships, but it's not going to be so in our faces. So we really have to be a bit more in tune with ourselves to figure out, oh, that made me feel icky. So we just need to be able to practice, and we practice by being able to apply and sort of get where we are at reflected back to us. Like, that's how we know.
And by the way, I just, to add, like, stubbornness is not resilience, because I'm extremely stubborn. And I can't say that that's made me resilient, because resilience for me, and my definition, you'll surely correct me when I am wrong, is that I can stay true to my faith.
Okay, so resilience, thank you, Rhea, for getting us to define it. Resilience is a bit like faith, but it's not. It's the ability to stand in our light no matter the consequences.
And tolerance. I was a massive people pleaser, right? And I give a lot of benefits of the doubts to everyone left, right, and center. So clearly that's not what it means.
For today, tolerance is understood to be the ability to live in harmony with others without judgment, bias, or anger.
But okay, that makes sense. So that the more practice we get, the further along in our evolution. Because actually, if you do it consciously, I'm like, all right, this triggered me, or where did I fall out of integrity, or whatever, or I'm just enjoy yippee da-doo-da, then, but effectively what you're doing over and over again is giving yourself permission to get happy, to be happy, because you're allowing yourself to be present in those moments of happiness without saying, oh, now life is going to bitch slap me in the face. You're allowing yourself to be free, because the more you are free, the more freedom becomes natural. You're allowing yourself to have fun, whatever that fun is, then you're allowing yourself, fun becomes natural. You're allowing yourself to discover what brings you joy, so you can do more of it, so that it kind of fills all your life. And effectively all those things I just listed is you're allowing yourself just to live. And once you live, these things, in my experience, naturally kind of come. Like, there's no point looking for the learning. There's no point searching or forcing it, because you'll never, I can tell you this from like so much experience. And, I'm really coming from a place where, like, literally looking at my shit and then trying to learn from my shit and then explaining how I did that and then trying to teach other people to do it has made me quite shit centric, right? Constantly for the lookout for my mine and other people's and doubts and insecurities. Where am I going next? Right?
Okay.
But no matter how much I've tried to force the learning, when it's not time, it's just not time.
You are not wrong about that.
And the thing is that actually when we try and force it, what we end up doing is we end up staying stuck in it for longer than necessary, because we're starting it earlier. When actually, if you just allow your life to flow, when the issue comes up, you face it head on, you deal with it, you move on from it, that whole thing can last about 45 seconds. But if you're going to start looking for it like weeks ahead, then all you end up doing is you end up waiting for it, which means it's existed the whole time you've been waiting for it, as well as in that moment. And because, like in the last episode, we were saying you don't know who you're going to be. Actually, whatever you're waiting for, it normally doesn't end up, whatever the learning is, it's never what you thought it was. Never. And it's never in the way in which you think it's going to come. So you're actually not only just wasting your time, but you're perpetuating your unhappiness. So if you can just live consciously, go for the fun, follow the joy, be free, have fun, and actually just be like, you know what? The more I live in this state, the more that state will become natural. And yes, if anything comes up, it'll come up and it'll deal with it. But more than that, the more that natural state means that there is nothing uncertain about 5D. Yeah. Because I've naturally gone into it and it feels right.
Well, because I've allowed it to come through me. Yeah. And like you said, you can't be preemptive about your healing. You can't be preemptive about this process. You can call all the shit to you thinking you'll burn through it faster. And in the end, it's still going to take just as long, if not longer. So go and be free. Give yourself permission to live and have fun, because it's going to come, whether you look for it or not. And that's not a threat. It's just a fact.
No. And also, it might not if you've done with it. So why don't you also allow the space for no shit to come? That's a possibility too. Yeah. And the more we live in that possibility, the more there is really nothing left.
Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.